You wore that to Mom's funeral? My sister Rachel sneered, her diamond cuff flashing under the church lights. I mean, times are tough for you, but couldn't you have at least tried? I'm Elise Morgan. I'm 34. And at that moment, standing in my simple black dress, I realized she still had no idea who I was. She didn't know I designed this dress. She didn't know I owned the brand on her feet, the boutique we were standing in, and the company that had just terminated her modeling contract an hour ago. My father adjusted his outdated Armani, pretending not to hear. My brother offered me a loan, as if I needed saving. They thought I was the failure in the family, the daughter who never made it. But they forgot one thing. Appearances are just fabric, and I've spent my entire life mastering the art of what lies beneath the seams. So when the time came, I made sure every stitch of their illusion unraveled, beautifully and publicly. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Tell me in the comments. You're going to love how this story unfolds. The morning of my mother's funeral was the kind of gray that seeped into your bones. Newport Bay looked drowned in mist. Like even the sky couldn't bear to see what my family had become. I stood before the mirror in my childhood bedroom, one of the few rooms my father hadn't turned into a sterile showpiece, and zipped up my dress. Black crepe, minimal structure, no embellishments. A designer's secret. To the world, it looked plain. To those who truly understood, it was art. But no one in my family ever cared to understand. At the church, the parking lot told our story better than any eulogy. My 10-year-old Prius sat humbly between my brother Blake's leased Mercedes and my sister Rachel's borrowed Porsche. Through the glass walls, I saw them inside, glossy, poised, accepting condolences like a royal family holding court. My father, Gerald Morgan, in an Armani suit he thought still whispered wealth. Blake, scrolling his phone, probably juggling another crisis at his collapsing bank. Rachel, camera ready in a cocktail dress that could have paid someone's rent. I slipped in through the side door, hoping for silence, but Aunt Martha intercepted me before I could breathe. "Oh, Elise, darling," she cooed, scanning my outfit like an inspector at customs. "How's your little boutique?" "It's fine, Aunt Martha." "You know," she whispered, "my neighbor's daughter just opened an Etsy shop. Very successful. You should talk to her, share ideas." I smiled, the polite, trained smile of a woman who's swallowed humiliation her whole life. "That's thoughtful. I'll keep it in mind." The service began. A string quartet played while the pastor, who'd met my mother twice, droned about her devotion to family. My throat tightened. My mother had been devoted, yes, but not to them. She devoted herself to beauty, to teaching women that elegance wasn't about labels, but about knowing yourself. And these people, her own family, had turned that into a punchline. When the reception started, I almost escaped. Almost. "There she is!" Rachel's voice sliced through the hall. Her entourage of perfectly polished friends turned like synchronized swans. "Elise, we were just talking about you." Of course they were. I walked toward them, holding the church's finest paper cup of bitter coffee. "All good things, I hope." "Always." Rachel's smile was sharper than glass. "We were saying how brave you are keeping Mom's little shop running, though honestly," she tilted her head, mock concern dripping from her words. "Wouldn't it be easier to just work retail? Nordstrom has great benefits." Vivian, one of her followers, nodded sympathetically. "There's no shame in a steady paycheck." I nodded back. "I'll keep that in mind." And then Rachel delivered the dagger. "I just can't believe you wore that to Mom's funeral." Her manicured hand gestured at my dress. "Times are tough, but off the rack, Mom deserved better." The group giggled like trained parrots. Behind her, Blake appeared, always ready to pile on. "Hey, Ellie," he said, the nickname I'd begged him to stop using years ago. "If you need to borrow money for something appropriate next time, just ask. We're family." "How generous." I smiled, noticing the concealer failing to hide his stress lines. Dad joined, pretending diplomacy. "Don't overwhelm her. Elise is doing fine with her hobby. Your mother left her that space rent-free. Sometimes that's enough for some people." Some people. They looked at me like I was a species apart. Pitiable. Small. "Oh, Elise," Cousin Jennifer chimed in. "I have some clothes to donate. Barely worn. You could sell them in your shop. Banana Republic and Taylor, good brands." "That's very thoughtful," I said again, my smile practiced to perfection. For an hour, I played their game. Every handshake, every backhanded compliment, every reminder of how little they thought of me. They discussed their vacations while I owned the resorts they stayed in. They bragged about investments while I quietly controlled the companies funding them. They pitied me for driving a Prius, unaware the Bentley slept in a private garage under my name. Each insult was another seam tightening around my heart, but I'd learned to sew pain into armor. They'd always defined success by flash. I'd built mine in silence. Then came Rachel's final performance. She stood near the memorial flowers, surrounded by her followers, boasting about her upcoming campaign. "The creative director loves me," she said. "I am the Valderie woman, sophisticated, unstoppable." I almost laughed. The message on my phone said otherwise. "Contract terminated effective immediately." "That's wonderful, Rachel," I said, raising my cup. "To new directions." She clinked paper to paper, missing the irony completely. As I left, the church buzzed with shallow condolences and whispers about my life choices. They didn't see the steel beneath the silk. They didn't know that while they were busy curating appearances, I'd been building an empire in their blind spots. But that afternoon, as I drove away from the funeral in my eco-friendly failure of a car, I felt something shift. This wasn't just grief anymore, it was clarity. They'd always believed my worth ended where their comfort began. But now, with my mother gone, there was nothing left to protect them from truth. The best revenge wouldn't come from rage. It would come from revelation. They thought they'd buried a woman today. They had no idea what they'd just awakened. Grief has a strange rhythm. The world expects it to fade, but mine sharpened into focus. The day after the funeral, I unlocked the door of Morgan Atelier, my mother's old boutique. The smell of cedar and faint jasmine still lingered, like she'd just stepped out for coffee. I touched the counter she'd varnished herself, remembering her words. "Elegance isn't what they see, Elise. It's what you know you are," I whispered back. "I know now, Mom." On paper, Morgan Atelier was a quaint downtown shop that barely made rent. In reality, it was the first thread in a tapestry I'd woven over 10 years, an empire stitched in silence. It started the year my father cut me off. He said, "Design is a hobby, Elise. Real adults chase profit." So I chased both. I built a small design studio out of the boutique's back room, started selling limited collections under the pseudonym E. Morgan, and reinvested every cent. While Rachel flaunted her influencer deals, I built partnerships. While Blake gambled on crypto and startups, I bought the buildings they rented. No one ever connected the dots. Every month, I sent Dad $2,500 to help with the house upkeep. He never asked where it came from, just assumed it was my boyfriend's money. He even joked once, "Whoever dates you must be very generous." I was, just not the way he thought. For years, I let them believe their version of me. The lost daughter, the plain one, the mistake. It was safer that way. People can't steal what they don't value. But behind the curtain, E. Morgan Atelier had grown into Morgan Group, a luxury brand conglomerate owning 4 labels, 2 resorts, and a fashion incubator. Last quarter alone, revenue hit $127 million, and not once had I used my real name. I worked 14-hour days, drank too much coffee, missed birthdays I was never invited to anyway. My circle was small. Samir, my CFO and closest friend, and Anna, my head designer. 2 people who saw me for what I built, not where I came from. "You sure you don't want to show your face, boss?" Anna asked one night while we reviewed the spring collection. "Not yet," I said. "The moment I do, it becomes about her again, about them." She nodded, understanding the unspoken truth. I didn't just want success. I wanted freedom. But peace is temporary when you're tied to a family like mine. 2 months after the funeral, Blake called. He never called unless he needed something. "Elise, wow, it's been forever. How are things?" "Fine," I said, already bracing myself. "So, Dad's thinking of selling the boutique, to cover some debts. Maintenance costs, property tax, blah, blah." I froze. "The boutique Mom left me?" He hesitated. "Technically, Dad's name's still on the deed. And he's getting older. Wouldn't it be better to—" "Stop!" My voice cracked like ice. "You're not touching that building." "Elise, relax. It's just a piece of property." "No, Blake. It's the last thing of hers that's real." He sighed, the same patronizing tone he used when we were kids. You always get so emotional. It's business. Then he hung up. I sat there for a long time staring at the phone, the quiet hum of the sewing machine filling the air. For the first time in years, my hands trembled. That night, I opened the corporate vault, the one hidden behind a digital alias and offshore layers. One click, and the boutique's ownership transferred from Gerald Morgan to E. Morgan Holdings. It was mine. Officially, legally, irrevocably. I closed my laptop and exhaled. The next morning, Rachel posted a photo from the boutique, posing by the window with the caption, "Saying goodbye to Mom's store today, moving on is hard, but growth is everything." I stared at it, my jaw tightening. She hadn't even told me she was there. Comments flooded in. "So inspiring. Your mom would be proud." No, she wouldn't. I messaged her privately. "Delete the post. You don't own that place." She replied with a laughing emoji and a single line, "You don't own anything, Ellie." She was wrong. I owned everything. And soon they'd find out. For years, I'd been building quietly, hiding power under humility, but grief had burned away the patience. I started preparing for what came next, the reveal. Samir looked up from his laptop one evening. "You sure you want to do this? Once you step into the light, there's no going back." "I'm done hiding," I said. They took my silence for weakness. Time to show them what silence built. I didn't plan revenge. I planned reckoning. They called me invisible. They were about to learn, invisible doesn't mean powerless. 3 weeks later, I received an embossed invitation with my family's crest printed in gold. Morgan Family Meeting, private event. I almost laughed. We'd never had a family meeting that wasn't about saving face. But curiosity tugged at me. Maybe this was it. The moment the snakes revealed their new skin. The meeting took place at the Morgan estate, the house I'd grown up in, the one that smelled of lemon polish and quiet contempt. Rachel opened the door in a silk jumpsuit. "You made it. Honestly, I wasn't sure you'd come. Thought you'd be too, busy sewing." "Surprise," I said, stepping past her perfume cloud. Inside, Blake stood by the marble counter, whispering with Dad. A pile of documents lay open, real estate papers, loan statements, spreadsheets. Elise," my father greeted too warmly. "Glad you're here. Sit. We have something important to discuss." The tension in his voice was syrup thick. I sat anyway, folding my hands. Blake cleared his throat. "So, Dad and I have been reviewing the family assets. Things are tight. Market's unpredictable. You know how it is." Rachel chimed in. "We're restructuring, that's all, for stability." Dad nodded, his eyes flickering. "We've decided to sell the boutique. The offer came in this morning. $1.2 million. We'll split it fairly." I let the words hang in the air, pretending confusion. "Split it?" "Well," Blake said, "since Dad's name is technically on the deed." "It was," I corrected quietly. They froze. "What?" Dad frowned. "The boutique isn't in your name anymore," I said. "It hasn't been for weeks." Rachel's laugh was a nervous trill. "Oh, please, don't tell me you went through your little paperwork phase again." I pulled out my phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward them. E. Morgan Holdings, I read. Registered owner. Effective date, March 14th. Their faces drained of color. Blake's voice rose. "You can't just take it." "I didn't take anything," I said calmly. "I protected what was mine. You were planning to sell Mom's legacy to pay for your gambling debts." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do. You owe $180,000 to investors under your fake LLC, and the boutique was your collateral." Dad's hand slammed on the table. "Enough! That shop was built with family money." "No," I said, standing. "It was built with her passion and my hands. You stopped believing in her before she died. I didn't." Silence rippled through the room. Then Rachel leaned forward, her voice dripping venom. "Wow, you really think you're something now, huh? Hiding behind fake business names, playing CEO while we carry the real family name?" I smiled thinly. "Funny, because that fake name paid your modeling checks for 3 years." Her mouth fell open. "What are you—" "The brand Valdery?" I said. "Owned by Morgan Group, my group, the one that just dropped you." Her face flushed red, her perfect facade cracking. You can't do that." "I already did." Dad looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You're E. Morgan?" I nodded. all this time. He sank into the chair, his voice breaking. So what now? You want to humiliate us? I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I just said, no. I want to stop pretending we were ever on the same side. Blake muttered something about lawyers. Rachel stormed upstairs, mascara streaking down her face. Dad just sat there, silent, defeated. I turned toward the door, my heels echoing through the marble. But before I could leave, Dad called after me. Elise, wait. I paused. He swallowed hard. Your mother, she'd hate this fighting. I looked back, meeting his eyes. She hated hypocrisy more. And then I walked out. The air outside was sharp, cold, cleansing. I sat in my car, shaking. Not from fear, but from release. For years, I'd dreamed of them knowing the truth. But the moment they did, it felt less like victory and more like liberation. Still, freedom came with its own cost. That night, news broke online. E. Morgan identified as heir of the Morgan family. Someone had leaked it, probably Rachel. My inbox exploded. Reporters, investors, opportunists. Samir called immediately. You okay? I will be, I said. This was bound to happen. He hesitated. Then you know what's next. Yes, I whispered, rebuilding from the ashes of their illusion. As I hung up, the city lights blurred outside my window. For the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt seen. But being seen means being targeted, and the Morgans weren't done yet. They came the next morning like coiled snakes, each with a different tactic. Pleading, fury, calculation. I had prepared. I didn't want to burn them to ashes for pleasure. I wanted to force them to face the consequences of the choices they'd treated like a joke. The day started with a call from Agent Davies at the FBI, asking for supplementary documents on Blake. I set the phone to meeting. Samir and our lawyers were in the boardroom. Elysia texted that the press was gathering below. I pulled on a plain black blazer, no flash, no jewelry to brag. But I slid Mom's tiny ring onto my finger, hidden and private. It steadied me. I called them into my office. Bringing them to my space felt right. I wanted the environment I'd built to be the place where their illusions cracked. Blake arrived first, hollow-faced and wire-tight. Rachel followed, perfumed and brittle. Dad entered last, attempting paternal posture that looked thin in the bright, clinical light. I've reviewed the records, I began, measured and cold. Blake, your loans to those startups? The predatory structures you engineered amount conservatively to $14.6 million tied to questionable contracts and hidden fees. You used family assets as collateral. Blake's hands clenched. He knew I knew. Ellie, it wasn't like, he started. My name is Elise, I cut in. Not Ellie at the table. The room shifted. I pulled up the forensic reports from our finance team. Transaction chains, crypto transfers, wire trails that didn't vanish because ghosts don't make bank records. Emails scrolled on the screen, contracts with clauses that read like traps. Malfeasance documented in black and white. As each line revealed another fact, Blake's defiance dissolved into a stunned kind of shame. It wasn't the threat of prison that unmoored him so much as the wreckage of reputation. Dad, I said, turning to Gerald, you've leveraged assets, delayed taxes, and now 3 properties are in foreclosure. The short term to avert seizure is $200,000. He swallowed. Money that once made him tower suddenly made him small. Rachel's voice took on that practice sting. We don't have to do this like this, Elise. We can negotiate, sell, split proceeds. Sell it, I repeated. I set on the table the notarized files Elysia had notarized, the transfer of ownership for the boutique to E. Morgan Holdings, recorded weeks ago with legal clauses explicitly protecting Mom's legacy from being encumbered. That's not happening. Mom left that shop for a reason. It's an incubator, not an ATM for your mistakes. Silence fell thick. Blake looked like a man caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Rachel, mascara streaking, looked almost childlike in her fury. Dad flailed for authority and came up with the old gestures of a patriarch. They no longer held currency here. I'm not here to destroy you, I said. I'm here to make you accountable. I walked them through the options we'd already carved. Conditional assistance, not blank checks. Dad could rent the family home at a below-market rate for 12 months. Temporary shelter, not immunity. Blake would be assigned counsel, but only if he fully cooperated with investigators and agreed to a restitution program using the crypto assets he still controlled. The trust would be independently overseen. Rachel wouldn't receive a golden parachute. She would start an entry-level training at a subsidiary with a transparent progression plan tied to performance metrics and public accountability. Fail and support ended. They called it cruel. I called it fair. For too long, I said, you asked me to rescue you while never really seeing me. Now you need rescue. It will come with accountability. The words were sharp but not vindictive. Blake broke down. No pretense, no posturing, just raw panic. What do you want? He asked, voice shredded. 2 things, I answered. Truth and change. My tone softened. You cooperate fully with authorities and the restitution framework. Rachel, you show up to work, learn, and stop begging for shortcuts. Dad, accept downsizing and counseling. Learn humility. It wasn't mercy. It was a plan that preserved dignity while ensuring they paid a price. They stared. The old power balance had flipped. I wasn't punishing them for the sport of it. I was taking the power they'd always assumed belonged to them and turning it into a lever for repair. Outside, someone leaked that Elise Morgan had been identified. My inbox flooded. Journalists, opportunists, creditors. Agent Davies rang back. We'll need your cooperation on a couple of items. I'm ready, I replied. This was the calculus of the life I'd built, turning anger into systems, revenge into structures that could rebuild what had been harmed. The most satisfying part wasn't the humiliation of watching them squirm. It was giving them a choice. Own what you did and try to make it right, or keep lying and watch consequences close in. They flinched because the safety net of denial had been cut away. As I gathered my files and walked them to the door, Blake's voice stopped me. Will you help? He whispered, defeated. I will, I said, but not because I owe you anything, because I choose to be the kind of person Mom taught me to be, and because it's how we make sure the next generation doesn't suffer the same way. I left them there, not destroyed, but measured, not humbled into obedience, yet, but given the hard path toward repair. That, more than any revenge, felt righteous, to force responsibility, to transform their privilege into accountability, and to convert family drama into something that could, if they accepted it, end in real, slow redemption. They had underestimated me for a lifetime. Today, I made them pay attention. Morning came soft and merciful, like the city finally exhaling after a long storm. I woke before my phone did, the kind of quiet that isn't empty but full of decisions made and doors opened. The first message I read was from Elise. Foundation paperwork uploaded. First grants ready for review. I smiled without meaning to. The machinery of repair was already turning. The week that followed was messy and miraculous in equal parts. Blake met with prosecutors and with the independent trust administrator we set up. He handed over spreadsheets and admissions that made his hands shake. He also wired the cryptocurrency he'd confessed to, $470,000, into the restitution trust. I matched it, dollar for dollar. That gave the fund an immediate seed of $4,940,000, ringed by strict oversight and a public audit schedule. It wasn't charity theater. It was repair with receipts. Dad signed the paperwork for the house transfer. He moved into a smaller rental I'd secured, comfortable, not gilded, on terms that forced real change. Financial counseling, a cap on extravagant spending, and a commitment to transparent accounting. He grumbled at first, then came to our first family dinner at my place 2 nights later with a bottle of wine and hands that trembled less. Rachel surprised me the most. She arrived at the boutique for her first training shift with a paper bag of essentials and a face that no filter could fix. She clipped price tags and learned to fold without flair. She failed at inventory the first day and stayed late to recount. When a customer asked for a scarf, she listened instead of posing. That night, she texted, "Today, I made someone feel seen. I didn't know that was the job." The work wasn't glamorous. It was impossibly honest. The foundation launched officially at a modest ceremony held not in a gilded hall, but in the back room of my mother's boutique, the origin point. We announced targeted grants for designers crushed by predatory lending, a mentorship incubator, and free legal clinics to help small brands disentangle from risky debt. The press attention was huge, but the real work happened the next week when a young accessories designer whose life had been ruined by one of Blake's schemes received a check and a message, "We see you. Let's rebuild." She cried in my arms. So did I. There were no cinematic revenge montages. There were tax filings and board meetings and long legal disclosures. There were awkward family conversations and hard therapy sessions. There was the slow, stubborn repetition of new habits. Rachel showing up at 8 a.m., Dad learning to track a budget line by line, Blake sitting in a small office with a restitution ledger in front of him that he could no longer run from. The thing people always gloss over about revenge is this. The part that feels most like triumph often looks suspiciously like mercy. Not the kind that undoes harm, but the kind that refuses to mirror it. I could have torched the house, called the press, or bankrupted them publicly and called it justice. Instead, I tightened the seams so the old fabric couldn't rip anyone else. At dinner that first Sunday, we didn't perform. We ate slowly. We talked around the edges. My mother's small velvet pouches, her pearl buttons, rested in the center of the table like talismans. Dad touched his button with a thumb that finally seemed to know the difference between possession and presence. Rachel laughed abruptly at something Blake said. Real laughter, not the practiced kind. For a few hours, we were ordinary, wounded people trying to be not terrible to one another. If there is a moral, it is not theatrical. It is practical. Power used well rebuilds. Power used only to punish consumes the user. My mother taught me to see people, to recognize potential beneath the surface. My choice was simple: make my visibility a tool for repair. So I run the company, I run the foundation, and sometimes I stand behind the counter in the boutique and help someone try on a scarf. Both things are true. One is about scale, the other keeps me honest. Thank you for following this story. Where are you watching from? Share in the comments. If this tale moved you, please like and subscribe. There are more stories about hidden strength and quiet justice coming soon.